Hello friends, welcome. Some of you might have seen my video already about the trip to the farm at the lambing time. Just out in the field looking at some sheep, some mule sheep we call them because they're a different cross, and some Southdown sheep with their lambs. It was nice, very nice to go back to the farm. I'll put a link to that video up in this corner so you can go and watch that one afterwards if you want to. It's a little bit warpy because we had some camera shake, and we tried a new thing on YouTube to level it out so it didn't make the camera shake, but it makes the video warp, so anyway I've left it. Well, I was born on the Goodwood estate, which is a beautiful estate here in south of England, West Sussex, and I grew up there. My mother Mary passed on when I was 10 years old of cancer, unfortunately, 11 years old. And but I lived up on top of some hills, the South Downs, and they were beautiful. And I said the sheep that we looked at, a few of them were the woolly heads, a Southdown breed, Southdown sheep. Anyway, I grew up on the estate. My grandfather was a dairyman, and he used to go visit his farm where he worked, and see him milking the cows, and it was interesting. I was never very academic at school because I've got short-term memory loss, so I could never spell very well or read very well or learn anything very well, so I wasn't academically achieved at all. Since I got a computer back in '97, I actually have learnt to read quite well, but my spelling's still terrible. But anyway, I left school as soon as I could because they weren't even entering me for exams because I was in the remedials class. So I left school and I went to the farm manager on Goodwood Estate where I lived, and my father was the groundsman at a horse race course on the estate, the race course, which is quite famous. So I went and saw the farm manager and said, is there any possibility of me getting a job on the farm? I quite like working with dairy cows maybe. And he said, sure, yeah, you can work on the farm, we've got a vacancy for you. And I said, is there any possibility of going to college? And he said, yes, you can go to college one day a week in the winter months. And so I did, and I started my 6 weeks before I actually started the job. It was lambing time, March, April time on the farm, and I was asked if I wanted to come in at weekends and work with the shepherd and help him out, and it was beautiful. Really lovely, enjoyed working with the sheep, and the lambing time was great, and they were outdoor lambing, and it was fun, and it was a good experience. But on my first day of work, the young stockman who looked after the beef animals and the calves and all the young heifers until they got pregnant, and then once they were gave birth, they were put into the dairy. And I had some experience working in the dairy, and I absolutely hated it. It was just like a production line to me. I didn't like it at all. So it was good, and I learnt to rear the calves and help the young stockman out with the rest of the beef animals and dairy cattle, and occasionally worked with the shepherd and done a bit of work with the shepherd, helping him out. And over a couple of years I found I really had a passion for working with the sheep, but was really still stuck working with the young stock, which was okay. And I had a brilliant person. The shepherd and the young stockman were very good livestockmen. They knew how to look after animals, how to spot when something was wrong with them, and many things they taught me, so it was good grounding. And I was doing general agriculture at college for the first year, and then the next 2 years I specialised in beef and sheep production, and then went on to do an evening course of sheep management. And my boss came to me one day when I was about 18, 19, and it was two of us there, and he said, well, what would you like to do in farming, Neil? And I said, well, I'd like to be a shepherd. And he said, well, you can become the under shepherd then, right now, starting tomorrow. And the shepherd's due to retire in just over 2 years. If you're good enough by then, you can take over and become the shepherd. So that's what happened, and the 2 years went by, and I helped the shepherd out greatly every day I was with him, because we had gone up from 300 sheep up to 1,300, which is quite a lot for one person. So he was 64, 65, so he needed some help, and I was there helping him, and I got some working sheepdogs and started training them up and got a good working dog, and it was great fun. It was a way of life really, up on the South Downs quite often, which I I'd lived up on the South Downs at the horse race course, and it was beautiful to be out in the countryside. I had a real affinity with working with livestock and with being out in the countryside still, so it was the perfect job for me. And I was a very conscientious person, so I put my best in, and I always learnt what I could to the best of my ability to do that. And the shepherd retired, and I became the shepherd there. But after a couple of years, the manager was so frightened of giving anybody else responsibility that I got a bit fed up with it. So I applied for another job, and I went up to Oxfordshire as the shepherd there on a smaller flock in Oxfordshire, working on my own with the sheep. And I did that for 3 years nearly, and the sheep industry was going through a bit of a recession, so I thought maybe that particular job was a bit dodgy, staying there. So I did apply for other jobs, and I found one near Guildford in Surrey, which is closer to where we live. Our family were down here where I am now in West Sussex, Chichester and Bognor. So yeah, it was great, and it was a way of life and a vocation. You quite often working 7 days a week in busy times, harvest time as well, but lambing time, very long hours, and sometimes I was working a 17-hour day occasionally, but mostly a 12 or 14-hour day. But it was for 6 weeks, and it was good. And we used to have an early lambing flock, and that lambed in January or just before Christmas. Where I was on the last farm in Surrey, we artificially inseminated the ewes and had them all cycle at the same time, so we had a week's lambing just before Christmas. So that was quite good, got it out of the way quickly. And then the normal lambing flock in March and April, that was 6 weeks lambing, so you were pretty tired by the end of it, but you get so much reward, because some of the ewes have problems lambing, and you help them out because the lamb's got his leg back and not coming right, or he's got his head back, because they're supposed to come, both feet and the head first, and sometimes they turn their head back or their breech coming backwards. So yeah, you get a fair few complications. Quite a few of them will lamb okay on their own, but we had them indoors with lighting at night, so you could see what was happening, you could easily find them, whereas in the field, if they're lambing, you've got to catch them first before you can do anything with them, and that's not always easy. So it's much more convenient to have them indoors on nice deeply straw bedded yards where it's nice and clean and everything, and you can catch them easily and help them out. And then once they've lambed, you take them out of the big pen of maybe 50 ewes and you put them on their own with their lambs for a day or so until the lambs are healthy and strong, and then you put them into like a mothering up pen where there's maybe 15-20 ewes, so that their lambs get used to finding them, and they already recognise their mother's call, because in the womb they learn what their mother's call sounds like, their voice. So yeah, they soon learn to find their own mother when they're mixed up with other ewes and lambs, and then they're ready to turn out into the fields to go out into pasture, mostly in the early normal lambing flock. And they're out in the fields and they thrive and are healthy. Now it's a way of life and a vocation, because you've got a love for it when you become a shepherd, and you've always got to be a good shepherd to the flock and look after its best interests before your own. So if you're needed to go out late at night, or if you're needed to finish a job off, you have to be conscientious and get that job done, or you're not a good shepherd. And you do your job as best you can. You have a love for it. So your greatest job is, they were going for meat, some of them, as well, going to market and everything, being sold the lambs when they were fit and ready to go to market. And but your job as the shepherd is to look after their best interests and welfare, and to always keep them in a healthy and good condition, and tend whatever their needs are. So yeah, it was great, and I was a good shepherd. That's no doubt about that, because I put their effort in, whereas some people, they just want to clock off at 5 o'clock and go home and eat their tea and not worry about it. Whereas a shepherd, really, you've got to be on the job when you're needed. So it was very hard work, very physical job being a shepherd, but it had its rewards, because you're bringing new life into the world. And when you're helping some out, and when they're thriving and looking healthy and good, you're proud of what you've done, and you can be. And where the last farm I was on, the first 2 years I was there, the second, going towards the end of the first year and second year, we entered the South of England sheep awards for best flock, and we won it both years. And we're a big flock. There was a lot of smaller flocks that had more attention given to them maybe, but our flock was supreme, and worthy of the prize. So we won it 2 years on the trot, the South of England Sheep Award for best flock. So, you know, it was a little feather in my bonnet that you could be proud of. You were doing a good job, because when they come and award a prize like that to a big flock and do it 2 years running as well, you know, you got them in the best condition they could be in, really, so they're thriving. And yeah, so it was great. And you know, I had my sheepdogs, 3 sheepdogs, and you know, you do a lot of running, because some of the fields that we were in, not so much the last farm, but you know, they're, you know, 50 or 60 acre fields, some 100-acre fields, and if, you know, you maybe got 200 to 300 ewes with their lambs in that field, and you'd have no chance. You'd have to have about 30 people to round them up and try and get them into a pen to do something with them if they need treatment of some sort. Whereas the sheepdogs, if it's just one sheep you need to catch, and you've got a good dog, you can catch them out in the field. So in the middle of the field, you point out the sheep you want, and the dog goes and grabs hold of the wool on the side of the neck if it's a ewe or a lamb, and just holds them enough for you to run up behind and catch them. But you know, the young lambs, I had a dog that would actually run up and lay on top of them and hold them down there. As long as you pointed out which one you wanted to him, he'd lay on top of them for a young lamb that was just a couple of weeks old. But after that, he'd actually get them by his side and just go round in a very fast circle the same direction as them until I went and plucked them out the middle. So, but other than that, you do need to get them into a big handling pen, and you know, you've got to have a couple of 3 dogs, 2 or 3 dogs, to do that with sort of 500 ewes with their lambs. And you know, it was great having the dogs, because they save you so much running. And I used to stand by the pen, and we were on the South Downs, and I mean, it was a half-a-mile run just to the top of the field, and I'd send one out to the right and one out to the left, and they gather them into a group because they're all spread out, and then they just gently bring them down and get them up into the pen. So yeah, I love working with the dogs, had great fun. And you know, I entered the local sheepdog trial, which was just a novice one, but there was some good sheepdog trialists there that come from far away, and there was about 30 dogs they had run there, and I got 2 third places, which my dog was not particularly that well trained up for doing sheepdog trials, because normally he was used to working 500 ewes, not 5. So yeah, he did well, and I got 2 third places and a 4th place. So I actually got some pictures taken of me. I'll just show them to you quickly. That one was at the sheepdog trial when I got 3rd place, and these were taken for local newspapers. Jill Paul took them, so they're sort of her copyright as well. I'll just show you my other one quickly, and this is taken by Jill Paul as well. It's just me and the dog, so that's a lovely picture, that one. I really like that one, but unfortunately I can't use it because it's copyright. So anyway, yeah, it was a great way of life, and I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, in 1993, the sheep industry was going through a bad time. I got made redundant from the farm, and because I was going out with a young lady there, I did get offered a job quite a long way away in Scotland, which I didn't really want to take that. So anyway, the young lady was there, so I stayed around the Guildford area, and I went and worked on a building site for a few months, and then I went on and I worked as a tractor driver, because I'd driven plenty of tractors and done different things. So I went on and worked as a tractor driver, and then a few problems started happening in my life, which were in my other awakening, and I got attacked as well by a spirit. But you know, that was a great life, so I look back on that with fond memories. I still miss it sometimes, and I miss my dogs as well. So anyway, thanks for watching this video. Click on the link to watch the one of me up at the farm. I'll put a couple of pictures on here anyway. Love and light, Shep.